Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Marianne, and I'm with EricsHouse.org. And for those of you who may be unfamiliar with EricsHouse, we provide integrative grief care for people who have suddenly lost someone they love. And we specialize in suicide loss and overdose loss. And tonight we're joined by two very, very special ladies, Lori Savoy. Lori, wave.
Hi, everyone.
And Denise Campanola.
Hi, everybody.
We're so honored to have both of you here tonight. And let me just start with a few introductions. And Lori, I'll start with you. Lori is a mother of three, and she turned her grief and sadness into a life-changing passion to help others, all as a result of losing her son Garrett to suicide in November of 2010. And Garrett was only 19 years old. Lori is an active member of Helping Parents Heal and serves as its board secretary. She joined Helping Parents Heal when it was in its infancy in 2011. And the work they do at Helping Parents Heal is absolutely amazing. She's also involved in Hope ASAP, which is an online Facebook group for people who have lost someone they love to addiction. She's a provider of Reiki with messages at Eric's House in Paradise Valley, which is an amazing service that we provide with two intuitives. And you get Reiki and you get messages at the same time. Her family has also created a book called The Ripple Effect, The Invisible Impact of Suicide, where the proceeds are used to supply books to suicide prevention groups and others who have lost someone they love. Lori is featured in two documentaries, Life to Afterlife, Mom, Can You Hear Me? And Life to Afterlife, I Want to Talk to the Dead. And Lori, I believe you're also involved in an animal rescue called Forever Midwest, right?
Yes, it's always in Forever Midwest Animal Sanctuary. And the person that started Hope ASAP as an online Facebook group for people having loss from addiction, drugs, etc. She started a senior dog rescue to help herself cope with the grief. Mm-hmm. And it was all for senior dogs. It's expanded now. It was one person, and there's about 1,000 dogs in 2 years. May 19th was 2-year anniversary. Well, she saved 1,000 dogs. So.
That's amazing. You're a very busy lady, Lori.
Yes.
Let me introduce Denise. So Denise Campanola lost her son Thomas to suicide in July of 2015. Denise received her Doctor of Medicine degree from the Ohio State University College of Medicine and completed her residency training in physical medicine and rehabilitation at Rutgers. Afterwards, she completed a postgraduate fellowship and obtained her master's degree in neuroscience. She's practiced for 17 years in the neuroscience area, and she's been teaching medical students throughout her career. And I know, Denise, you love teaching.
Yep, true.
She's a recognized thought leader in the field of multiple sclerosis with a subspecialty board certification in spinal cord medicine. She has also co-edited a textbook entitled Spinal Cord Medicine. And over the past 8 years, Dr. Campanola, Denise, has worked in the biopharm industry where she's been involved in research and drug development for multiple sclerosis. Denise is a member of the advisory board for Eric's House with a focus on uncovering new approaches to finding advances and better therapies for mental illness. And of course, this is all as a result of the loss of her son, Thomas. And Denise, remind me, how old was Thomas when he passed?
Well, he had just passed his 20th birthday. He passed about 2 weeks after his 20th birthday. Okay. Yeah, and that's my only credibility in this group is certainly my experience and loving and then losing my son.
Yeah. Well, that is the experience, right? That's the thing that changes us and also binds us all together.
Agree.
So I have a lot of questions for both of you, but I first wanted to acknowledge you both for being courageous and being willing to put your stories out there. We have a lot of viewers that are on tonight, but also people look at this on our YouTube channel. And I know that it's very helpful. So I really honor and respect you for being willing to tell your stories. I know it's not easy. So Denise, let me start with you. I know that Thomas struggled with mental illness. Can you tell us a little bit about his struggle?
Yes, I can, Marianne. But first, before I get into his struggles, I think it's important for you to know Thomas a little bit.
Great.
So first, I gotta share his beautiful photo with the group. I mean, this was a intelligent, beautiful, kind young man, for sure. A deep thinker. He loved to analyze the world, including its injustices, which I think he felt very much in his heart. I think he was really an empath, and for those of you who might not be familiar with that term, I really think he felt, he felt the injury and the sadness in others, and took it into himself. And he suffered from major depressive disorder. I think he was actually bipolar, but that's in retrospect. And that's, ultimately he lost hope. And I think that's the issue that really is a big problem, today. When did we find out that he was struggling with depression and again, perhaps bipolar depression? I mean, certainly in high school, but really things came to a very much worse period of time when he went to college. And I think that's something that has to be also communicated and understood. Colleges and universities are places of higher education, wonderful experiences for most kids, but not for all. And I think, if you look into the suicide rates in major college campuses today, I mean, it's exponential.
Yeah, and we do see it. We see quite a bit of cases.
Yeah. So college was certainly, the beginning of the end. He had a full ride scholarship to the University of Arizona, but he never made it past a couple of months.
Okay. When did you first notice? Was it in high school that you noticed that he might have been struggling?
Yes, I mean, definitely that was the beginning. But we saw a lot of resiliency in high school.
Okay.
And probably because of his good support system, his friends there, good friends. He loved us, his sister Emily, my husband, his father Tom. I mean, I think things changed when you're kind of on your own in the college setting. Living on your own. I think there was some of that support system fell away. Yep.
Okay. And were there any major signs that led up to his death? Were there any events that triggered his death? What happened there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was a trigger, but again, I think the depression just got very bad, I think, very fast. And the symptoms of, not being able to get out of bed, the lack of energy, the no drive, really, weighed on him. He saw himself not succeeding and not being able to get through. And, we sought help. We sought psychological counseling, as well as psychiatric care. But ultimately, none of it was enough. And that's another message that I think is very important. I mean, we need 5 times the number of counselors on college campuses and university campuses than there are right now. In the 3 major schools in this state, in Arizona, there's a waiting list. If you're not, in crisis, there's a waiting list of months and months and months.
Yeah. And I had recently read a report where they screen students that might potentially be at risk. And so their file gets tagged, but nobody ever follows up with
Just the manpower. The manpower is not there.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Denise, how did you learn of his passing? Because I know that you were separated by miles.
About 2,000 of them, yeah. Because, I mean, as I mentioned, he was a freshman at U of A in Tucson, Arizona. And at the time that he took his life, we were in New Jersey. My husband and I were in New Jersey. He, and this is going to be a little difficult, I think, to hear, but I mean, he took his life with me on the phone. So there was no question about what happened. I mean, that is a curse and a gift at the same time. I mean, he didn't want to be alone. He was in a very, very severe mental state, obviously a depressive state. And, he reached out on the phone and took his life with me on the phone. So again, there was no question about, where was he? Where is he lying somewhere? We knew exactly where he was.
Yeah, Denise, I'm so sorry, but that is a very important point, because a lot of us, moms, dads, spouses, friends, we always wonder about, what happened there. And so thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me segue over to Lori. So Lori, tell us your story and tell us a little bit about Garrett.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm not as organized as Denise because I'm packing to list my house, but I have a picture of Garrett, and this is my book that Marianne was talking about earlier. Sounds like my son and Garrett could be Garrett and could be twins, because he was the same kind of, happy kid, loving kid. He had a great upbringing. He grew up with me as his mom, his dad. He has two sisters, one older, one younger. He liked to stay home. Now in hindsight too, like Denise, I believe that Garrett was an empath and felt everybody's issues and that kind of thing. He stayed home a lot. Now I understand why. He knew how to cope with that. He was not a super great student, but he was in college. Prior to that, he'd gotten in a little bit of trouble with drugs. He took off for about 6 months. We tried to help him. I'm going to say we tried 100 things to help him. Of course, as a parent, you do all that. So I'm paralleling Denise in that aspect. Anyways, he got good. He came home. He got a job. He was doing great. The last 10 days, he took off. He had a court case. It was on a Wednesday morning, and he never showed up. But 10 days before that, he took off. I didn't even know where he was living. And I heard he didn't show up. So I ran around looking for him, and I actually found where he was staying, and I found him, and I missed him by apparently 10 or 15 minutes.
Wow.
So as a mom, that kind of irks me, but as a spiritual person, I know that I wasn't meant to save him.
Yeah. Did you, I know he struggled a little bit with drugs, and I think probably most of you know my story. My son did struggle with drugs, heroin, and then ultimately left by suicide. I know that whether it's a mental health issue or whether it's an addiction issue, we still walk with our kids and help them and support them no matter what. Did you know that he was struggling? Was there anything just before he passed that you reflect on now? And
no, we are maybe a weird case, maybe a normal case. I'm not sure if there's any normalcy in this situation. He did not leave a note. I think he was maybe scared that he might be going to jail, but been fine. There was no indication. There was no depression. I mean, it's just basically, I'm going to say, out of the blue. If were you expecting it? Absolutely not.
Right. And Denise, did you feel the same way? Did it ever cross your mind that you might lose him?
Ultimately, we never thought it would happen. It's just, but one of the very last things he said to me, and again, this is perfect example of my son Thomas, is that, he said to me, "Mom, you'll find a group to help you understand how I feel." I didn't know what he was saying at that point.
Mhm.
about 5 seconds later than I knew. And so I think, it's important to understand that you don't know, you can't know. I could have said something different maybe at that instant. I wish I did, but yeah, that's all he was thinking about was us. And then he had to stop the pain. I think ultimately that's what he felt like was the solution to stopping the pain.
Yeah. And in my case, I kind of suspected it a few weeks before, because he wasn't acting erratically or anything, but I could tell he had gone into a deep depression. Lori, how did you learn that Garrett passed?
Well, his dad had,
What were the circumstances? What were you
his,
doing? And
so I was actually at elementary school helping all the kids get out, ironically, get all the kids get out of their parents' cars and get safely into school, which I've done voluntarily for 4 years, because my little one at that time was 11. She had turned 12 a few days before her brother took his life. My husband had called me from court to say he hadn't showed up, and so I ran around to his work to talk to his boss, and we called him because I didn't even know where he was staying, because he took off for 10 days. And anyways, long story short, I went to one place. I ended up getting lost, went to the wrong place, went across the freeway, went over there, went to actually one wrong apartment, and I didn't know which one it was, so I ran to the office. So all this time I lost. Maybe I could have saved his life, I'm not sure. So anyways, they broke down the door.
okay.
Feet there, and he had taken his life.
Yeah. Okay.
So I found him.
Yeah. Yeah. And where were the kids? Did the kids get to school? And
No, well, I was outside of the elementary school with where I was volunteering, opening car doors for these little ones to get out safely to get to school. So I was probably a half an hour away of where he ultimately had got a place. And so yeah,
yeah.
it wasn't fun.
Yeah. Well, one of the amazing things about talking with both of you tonight is the stories of hope and healing that each of you are individually bringing to the world, really bringing to the world. For people who have not gone through this experience, I also found my son, and Denise experienced the death of her son. For people who have not gone through it, it's so hard to imagine what we go through. But really, both of you are such great examples of taking your pain, your experience, your suffering, and turning it into something that really helps the world. I mean, really helps the world. And so both of you should be commended for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The other interesting thing is, we're all on different timelines. I'm in my 4th year. Denise is in her 5th year, and Laura, you're in your 10th year. And I kind of like that because you're survivors. You survived the worst possible thing that anybody could think of experiencing. And here you are doing the good work that you're doing. So I'd like to just ask you a few questions about where you are in your journey. And Denise, I'll start with you. Just give us a snapshot of what the first year was like, because I know that we have some newly bereaved people on the call. So just tell us a little bit about what the first year was like for you.
Well, I mean, certainly the fog of that first year is indescribable almost. I think that first year is really wrought with so many emotions, such extremes of emotion too. I think it's hard to almost describe, but that first year is one of just trying to rebuild a little bit pieces, and obviously he's still with you so strongly that you know no day goes by without continuous thoughts of the child you lost, and it's that's very important for that period of
It
time.
is, yeah.
And I was on a mission, honestly, Marianne, that first year, and I have to just share with you a little bit about that mission, because my son was under a good deal of psychological and psychiatric care, and I actually found a recording on his cell phone that was the entire last session of him with his psychologist on a voice memo on his cell phone. That was 59 minutes and 23 seconds. And the bottom line is, that's when I learned that he actually verbalized to his psychologist, the question the psychologist asked him was, Thomas, are you suicidal? And he said, oh, it's an option, just like all the other options. And what did not follow were questions like, well, let's talk about that. Do you have a plan? Is there a weapon in the house? All those questions that any mental health provider should know to ask to do a risk assessment, right? Very basic risk assessment, but none of that happened. And so the long story short is I needed to make sure that this particular mental health provider didn't have other U of A students in front of him telling him the same thing. So I did take him before the Arizona Board of Psychological Examiners, and the result is the suspension of his license.
Oh gosh,
so
yeah.
That is a perfect example of a therapeutic alliance gone wrong. To have a really good mental health provider, there has to be a therapeutic alliance, an agreement, and they have to like each other. And I just don't think that any of that happened.
Right.
So that's one of the missions of my first year, which actually extended into the second year. But I do want to mention that because it's important to have a very, very perfect and good alignment between the mental health provider and the patient. It's critical. Yeah.
And you probably saved other lives, Denise.
I think I did, but I don't know. But all I know is that I didn't want him hearing that again from another 20-year-old and not doing anything again. Yeah.
Now, what is it like as you approach your 5 years?
I think I describe it typically as, basically carrying a 50-pound backpack. And I've learned to carry that, right? My legs have gotten stronger. I've learned how to carry that 50-pound backpack of grief and keep going. And thankfully, what I've learned is to bring Thomas along with me.
Yeah.
Because he knows everything that's going on. And I think that that's the key. I bringing the kid you lost right along with everything else that's happening, good and bad, right? He knows what's going on with our pandemic today. And he was a germaphobe. I have to mention that he wouldn't like anything that's going on in this world today. Thomas, you know what I'm talking about, buddy. It's important, I think, to bring them along. And I think the other thing I need to mention is that tell people and tell your loved ones, your acquaintances, don't be afraid to mention his name, because believe me, people are afraid to say their name in front of you, like you might be reminded that they died. Yeah. Believe me, I know he died. And so really what you remind me of is that he lived, right? I mean, that you remember him. I'm afraid that people are going to forget him. But anyway, sorry, I'm talking too much.
No, that's okay. I know that you wanted to talk about guilt and suffering in his life.
Yeah. I did, because it's, if I have guilt and regrets, it's the amount of suffering that he did, in life, right? I mean, I know he's at peace now. Yeah. The pain is gone, but the amount of suffering that anyone with mental health issues has, and he was a gay young man living in a Catholic household, and that was another source of suffering. And I will be the first one to admit that I was probably the source of some of that, although that did, that conflict, if you will, which is unfounded in my opinion. I live my faith. There's no question about that, but that's a component that disconnects the worlds. And so anyway, make a long story short, I think that it's the suffering that he did during life that I'm most saddened, and that he couldn't find help anywhere. Medication really didn't help him. Right. His toxicology was perfectly clean. He was never utilized any drugs that I'm aware of. Certainly nothing on the day that he died.
Yeah.
So it's the suffering, that he did during life that I wish I could have taken that away. Yeah.
Thanks, Denise.
Yeah.
You mentioned a book, one of the first books you read. You have an image of that book? If you could share it.
I do, and hopefully you could see it. It's making sense out of suffering. It's by Peter Kreeft. The beautiful soul, the priest who did the funeral and buried my son, told me to read this, and I think it's I mean, there's many books out there.
Oh, yeah.
Laurie's is one of them. Beautiful read. You have to read them, but this one in particular touched me just because, again, it taught essentially that suffering is a part of our lives, and our soul essentially learns from suffering. Believe it or not, I wish it was not the way our soul learns, but
Right.
suffering is probably the key teaching, if you will, for the soul. Yep.
Well, we'll make sure we get the data on that book and get it out to the viewers. Thank you so much, Denise.
You're welcome.
Now, Lori, you're at 10 years. And look at you 10 years later. Look at all the wonderful stuff you're doing to help the world. Can you tell us a little bit about your first year?
Yes, I can. My first year, I was also in that fog, I'm going to say, for 2 years. I'm pretty sure God cocooned me for a couple years, although 2 weeks after I went back to work, I needed a bit of normalcy. I needed to be busy. In fact, maybe I'm a little too busy. I don't want to be home alone in my own head, which I have been 3 months with coronavirus, and actually I quite enjoy my own company, and it's been a-okay. But I had a bit of a different experience. I'm very spiritual, and the night before, my mom came to me in my room. So I talked to my mom and I said, "You better not be here for what I think you're here for." So my soul knew. My son found a medium on earth from heaven and connected all of us very shortly thereafter. So I knew he was okay. I knew all about, I don't know the details of why he chose this, etc. But at the end of the day, it's not really important.
Right.
I didn't get a toxicology report or anything done because he was gone. So to me, it was, why do I need to know those details, even though I'm a detailed person? I made a choice right away. I figured I had 2 choices. Get down on the carpet and never get up, or I keep standing up. I had an amazing support system. Having been in Helping Parents Heal now, I know a lot of newly bereaved parents and or people that, some people can't even get out of bed for 6 months, and I understand that, I get that. I was not one of those people.
Yes.
I just was innately strong about it.
Mm-hmm.
My soul knew. And there's one weird thing about it is that he never fit on earth. He was going, always busy, always this, always that. Right after he passed away, my husband said, "Why was he so much work for 19 years?" And I said, "Why did God think we were so amazing that we could handle it as parents?"
Yeah. Right.
From that, knowing that he was at peace and not having the burden of life, because the kid just didn't fit on earth. As mom, you only want your kids to be happy and at peace. And
Yeah.
in a weird, twisted way, my heart and soul, even though it was ripped apart, I didn't have to worry about him. I knew where he was. And, I don't want to get into religion or anything, but people will say they don't go to heaven and they need to do this, they need to do that. No, he was great right there. And so that was a sense of peace for me.
Mm-hmm.
So how did I survive I was not normal. I had friends bringing food for 8 months.
Wow.
my husband saying, okay, that's enough. And quite frankly, I just did not have the energy to cook or anything. And to them, it was a loving gesture. The whole community gathered around us. It was something they could do, because it's one thing if your child is, or your loved one is, you know, a car accident or whatever. When they take their life, it's a whole other ball. People don't know what to say,
Right.
how you're feeling. They don't even know how they're feeling about it.
Right.
So that it was, so I took the help, and that was a big life lesson for me.
Yeah, and you know, I did the same. I took as much help as I could possibly get, because I felt like for me, I was in really big trouble. So, you know, I think I just needed to do everything that I could do, try everything and get well. You know, Lori, I wanted to ask you about guilt. And I know you wanted to talk about a part of your book. I know when my son died, I had a tremendous amount of guilt. Did I do this? Did I do that? What should I have done different? But I wanted to get your perspective on how you feel.
Well, I was talking to my husband about that the other day, and he said he doesn't feel guilt about son taking his life, but he feels guilt about some things that maybe he could have done different, just like Denise said, you know, maybe she could have said something different on the phone. You know, you just do the best you know at the time with your situation. We all did, everybody on the call. For me, people ask me, do you feel guilty about it? And I say, I don't feel guilty about it. It never was my choice. This was not my choice. This was something that was put upon myself, my family, changed the dynamics of our family. But the kid knew he was loved. That kid knew I was the best mom I could all throughout his whole life, and I continue to be the best mom. Denise with Thomas, I still talk to him. And those two on the other side be, yeah, look at our moms go. We're so proud of them, you know, like they're together. Now we just painted new bodies. And they just walked through a door and went elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wanted to talk about guilt in that, because I know that having lost somebody who took their life, that's huge for people to get over the guilt. And I personally I didn't choose it.
Yeah.
Thrust upon me, so it's not my guilt.
Yeah.
You know, I'm guilty because I ate a bowl of ice cream and I can't zip up my pants. I'm guilty of that, but this isn't. I don't have guilt over this.
That's really insightful, Lori. Thank you for sharing that. Well, okay, so before we invite everybody back into the room for questions, I'd like to ask each of you to leave the people listening tonight with some advice, not advice, but ideas or insights from your own journey that might be helpful.
I'll go.
Okay.
Marianne, I know you know what I'm going to say, because you're involved in the same film project I'm involved in, and just like Lori is involved with the documentary from the Helping Parents Heal group, we also are working on a film project through the group called Through a Parent's Tears. And you know, we're working as 8 families, essentially telling our stories, the stories told by the families, with the help of an evidential medium. It happens to be Melinda Vale, very talented evidential medium. You know, and with her help, you know, her helping my husband and I contact Thomas, and Thomas to come through so strongly, like he did. That was really a tremendous healing moment for sure. You know, the evidence, stone cold evidence that only my husband and I and he knew, that came out in that reading was you know, clear that he was right there, saying, Mom, you know, I'm here and here's the proof, because there's no way the things that Melinda was able to communicate to us from across the veil, only we knew. So I think it's important, this particular documentary, hopefully it'll be out pretty soon, and I think that Through a Parent's Tears is something that could help others. Again, I'm looking for something that we could send out there and people to be able to view and maybe help them find the right healing modalities.
And it is 8 families, and everybody's story is still so very different.
Yeah.
And what each of us are doing to turn it into good is also very different. And it's just an amazing project. And Lori, like your projects, we're able to pick ourselves up and figure the whole thing out and turn it into good to help not only specific individuals, but really the world, just to bring a little hope and healing to the world. So thank you for that. Lori, how about you? Any last insights before we invite?
I wanted to read a couple things. So I've shown my book. My book is a compilation of about 100 people from the community, and actually some people that don't even know us or anything. And my book is about what it feels like to be left behind. So had the book been out or whatever in Thomas's hands, maybe he would look at it, read it, and say, wow, this is the impact I'm going to leave for my mom. Not only my mom, but it's called the ripple effect, because everybody doesn't realize how even just smiling at somebody creates a ripple effect to somebody to change their day. So I was going to read something from somebody that talks about he's a specializes in grief and dying, but basically he was talking about suicide and how people don't want to. It's a taboo to talk about it, so he thinks it's the hardest grief to get over.
Yeah.
You really understand why so in Thomas' case, Garrett's case, they all came from loving families. So they were loved. Maybe they didn't love themselves enough. I don't know. That's their business, not mine. But as a parent or as a mom or as a loved one walking in life with somebody, you just want the best for your kids, and you just want them to be happy, and however you can help that. I did write a little thing about, I did have a little bit of guilt, and maybe I'll just read it real quick. I don't know.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so this whole book is like people wrote songs. It's all about hope, love, and communication. I did this because my son was not a good communicator. Unlike Thomas, he was not a deep thinker. I mean, he would get into things, but he didn't talk a lot. He didn't communicate. I have to tell you from the other side, that guy is so communicative. As a mother, drives me nuts. Why couldn't you have been like that on Earth? But, why didn't you talk about how you were feeling? By God, we would have helped you.
Yeah.
But I didn't know, so I can't fix what I don't know. But
yeah.
This is one little part of the book that I think it'll relate to everybody. People who are a father or an uncle or a cousin or a brother or whatever, you can take away the word child and put your loved one in, because it's for everybody. But this is what I wrote. I did not write in the book a lot. It's mostly other people, but this is what I wrote. Death on the whole isn't talked about much or well. And I can tell you from experience that the topic of suicide is a tough one. It is one thing to lose a child, loved one, to an accident or disease, but it's an entirely different matter to lose a child by his or her own hand. In the former situation, parents suffer, but don't question if they were a good parent. On the other hand, I have to carry the shameful burden of why wasn't I a good enough parent? Suicide. What do you say to someone when they ask how your child died, when you don't even really know why? Mixed with the devastating sadness, I had to work through the grief and the stigma of not good enough mother syndrome I created for myself. So these are my words in the book out there, so that people, because we all love our kids to the best of our ability.
Yeah.
And it's not like they got run over by a car or what have you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Lori. The name of the book is The Ripple Effect, and I think you have a few other resources you'd like to share, and we'll get them recorded and out to the people
And I have a couple
participating
more.
on the call. Okay, so you know, I know that it is such a sad topic, but we actually are beginning in our 3 journeys to experience happiness and joy. I've seen both of you on occasions where you laugh and are happy and enjoy the day. And I know some days are hard and other days are just fine. They're just fine. And yes, we do think about our loved ones all the time, and sometimes we think about them more in their death than we do when they were alive. And I consider that a really precious gift. And mediumship, I know, has helped all 3 of us quite a bit and continues to help so many people all over the world. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing the intimate details of your experiences. I just appreciate it so much. So thank you very much.